Today, I was meant to be racing the Chicago Marathon in the women's pro field and going for a new PB. Sadly, that's not the case. Last week I shared with you the update that I have a fracture in my femoral condyle. It's right behind the knee. I have some damage in the cartilage and some inflammation in the patella area. And that means I won't be running for a while. I've never had a bone injury before, or anything serious, really. So this is the first roadblock of its kind in my career. And whilst I feel like I was pretty positive, all things considered, in last week's video when I announced that injury with you all, the mental side of this injury is a much bigger beast. The ripples of what this injury is going to impact for me, professionally, financially, physically, and mentally, are huge. And that's a complicated thing to process. It's not super straightforward, and it's hard. And arguably, the hardest of all of those areas is the mental battle. So that's what I'm going to be talking about today. And quite a lot of this video is going to be a literal readout of a conversation I had with my sports psychologist 2 days ago, where I cried for the first time in front of my sports psychologist 4 times in the 1 hour session. And that's pretty huge for me. And I'll get into exactly why that is. But first, I want to just recognize that all of us experience setbacks and injuries. Whether we like it or not, it's going to happen. I think it's really important to be honest about what that looks like mentally, even if it's hard and messy to talk about. Whether you like it or not, talking about all of it really does help. And maybe by filming this video, I can share something that might make some of you feel less alone or trapped if you go through something similar in the future. And I'm going to get through it with the help of a Yorkshire brew. Not sponsored, but a cup of tea can also help a lot. And if you want to follow what is going to be quite the comeback over the next few weeks and months, I've got an Olympic team to try and make in 2028. Hit that subscribe button to see me come back from no walking to racing another marathon next year. Today, it's the 12th of October. It's been 11 days since I got those MRI results. I've been on crutches ever since. And you'd think that the biggest emotions would have been felt the day I found out. Those few days when I was kind of wrapping my head around this being the reality. But it's almost like the strongest emotions have actually gotten worse each day. To start off with, to be honest, when I found out, I mostly just felt really numb and not much else. I've since learned that that is actually pretty normal. There's lots of different stages of processing something like this and getting to the point where you accept it, because it's a form of grief. And maybe it's the fact that today is the 12th of October. And so leading up to today, which was the day I was meant to race the Chicago Marathon, it's somehow gotten more intense and more real. We were getting ready for bed last night and I said to Daniel, it just feels so strange that the Chicago Marathon is going to happen tomorrow morning. The gun's going to go off and I'm not going to be on the start line. And I think that's a completely normal way to feel after training for that one race for literal months and feeling really positive about how it was going to go until this injury came up 2.5 weeks out, completely unexpectedly. And maybe some of those emotions will now start to stabilize a little bit now that the race has happened, I wasn't there, and I'm kind of moving forwards from that kind of milestone, if you like. But maybe it will still get harder for a little bit. I don't know. But one thing I do know, after speaking with my sports psych earlier this week, is that I actually have to feel the emotions that I am feeling when they come up, which is not something I tend to do when I'm not in a good place. Immediately as I got into this sports psych session, she asked how I was, and I started talking about goals, when I might be able to walk without crutches, when I might be able to have cross-training goals, rehab goals, when I might be able to plan my next race. And then I said, all of these hypothetical goals that I don't know where to place in the next few weeks, they're very grey and unknown. And I just can't set those goals right now because I don't know how long I'm going to be out for. I'll hopefully know a lot more next week once I've seen the sports doctor, and he'll hopefully give me a little bit of a roadmap so that I can see when those things are going to happen. But right now, I can't live my life by saying it's exactly this many weeks until my next race, or it's exactly this many weeks until I start my next training block. And that's really alien for me. So after recognizing that, my sports psychologist very cleverly said, perhaps we don't make those goals right now. They don't feel super helpful in this moment with all of the unknowns. And instead, I think we really need to do the hard things. We need to deep dive how I'm feeling right now, talk about the really hard stuff that brings up, all of the emotions that come with it, and sit in that and feel it. And that is something that I find really, really hard to do. I have a habit of suppressing what I see as negative or unhelpful emotions, sometimes intentionally, sometimes without even realizing I'm doing it. And instead, I just keep busy, distract myself, focus on the practical stuff, set new goals, and basically just avoid what I'm feeling. What talking about that itself has already taught me is that I have a coping mechanism. Take action, focus on the controllables, and bypass the emotion that is not helpful to me right now. And I think that's super effective when I'm working through a really hard session or wanting to calm my nerves before a race. But it's not super helpful when I experience something big like this. Something that is shocking and really hard to accept, but something that really needs processing in order to be able to move forwards from it. Because I have a suspicion that if I bury it deep beneath the surface, it's just going to come back up later. Maybe when I don't have the space to process it. Maybe when I'm super stressed about something else. And you can end up just dragging it out, ultimately making it worse. So we sat and we spent a lot of time unpacking the emotions and the hard stuff. I spoke about how I'm feeling massive amounts of uncertainty right now, what the future looks like, how I'll cope if I potentially get more bad news, or this injury perhaps taking longer to come back from, uncertainty about how this is going to challenge me mentally for weeks, uncertainty about areas that this is going to have a knock-on impact, and at times there's an uncertainty there and a worry about whether I'll get back to being my best. I have the fear that the doctor is going to turn around next week and say, this is much worse than we previously thought. Having looked at the images, you actually need to take much longer off. Or actually, you need to have surgery, and that's going to be really difficult to come back from. I am fearful that this could be the start of a string of injuries. You hear about athletes that pick something up and then it's just one thing after the other. I'm fearful for how this is going to stay with me physically. Will I always have a bit of a knee problem? Mentally, will I ever feel confident again? I spoke about frustration. There's a lot of frustration within me. Frustration that this happened, that it happened when I was in the shape of my life and so ready physically and mentally to go into this taper and attack this race. Frustration that despite doing everything in my power in the circumstances, it wasn't enough. And there's also a lot of sadness. I'm sad that I didn't get to race today, not just because I wanted to put that training block into a performance, but because I was really excited to do the race and I love racing marathons. It's such a fun part of my job and I'm sad I don't get to experience that. The other element of sadness, which I think is going to grow and stay with me over the weeks, is a sadness that I don't get to do what I love and what makes me feel my best for an unknown amount of time. It's really hard to talk about those emotions because when you're trying to suppress them, talking about them brings them up when you've been trying to force them down. But when people say that talking about it helps, they're right. In the moment, it might not feel great, but you free yourself of that suppression over time, which I think is going to feel like a huge weight lifted. I agreed with her that I'm going to make space over the next week or so to let those emotions come up when they want to come up. There might be some new ones in there, might get some bonus new emotions as I go through this injury, and I'm just going to see them and place my hand on my chest, label those emotions and give myself permission to sit with them. Which again is not what I usually do. But I do genuinely believe that this chapter, which was unplanned and is still not what I want, is an opportunity. I get to decide what I want from this. And I know that I have a lot of room for improvement, both as an athlete and as a person, in how I process hard things and how I let myself feel the emotions that I'm feeling. And hopefully I can come out of the other side of this with a big win by growing a lot from that. And one of the things that she shared with me that I thought might be really valuable for some of you guys is the idea of winning shallow and winning deep. Both are useful, but at different times, you kind of need to make a decision on which one you need. Shallow wins keep us going, and they can give us confidence in the moment. Maybe that last workout before you race doesn't need to be shiny, fast splits, and by holding back a little bit and putting in an 8 out of 10 effort, you can do what you need to do and feel a little bit fresher the next day as a result. But maybe for you, putting in 10 out of 10 effort and getting those shiny, fast splits is going to give you that little bit of extra confidence that you need to go into the race feeling good. That's an example of a shallow win. Confidence in the moment, not really making a difference in the long term. Deep wins are where we go through the hard stuff. It might not feel great in the moment, but we're building a lasting foundation and confidence in the long term. Committing to a new strength program that might make you sore the day after you do it for a good few weeks and that isn't really going to translate into any measurable results for months is an example of a deep win. So in this moment, recognizing what I'm feeling and leaning into and giving myself the compassion to feel those things whilst committing to work through it is not going to feel very fun in the moment. But it's going to be a deep win. Watching the race this morning was really hard. I didn't have to do it, but I wanted to. I am, at the end of the day, a fan of this sport as well as an athlete within it. I had friends and teammates competing. I wanted to see how they got on, and I knew I would just be wondering what was happening if I wasn't watching it anyway. I let myself feel the emotions that were coming up and sat with them for as long as I felt I needed to. And doing this doesn't mean that I'm just going to let myself wallow in the fear, the uncertainty, the frustration, the sadness. I'm doing things that fill my cup up as well, and we've had a lovely week of spending time with friends and doing things that I wouldn't normally get to do because I'm busy training or worrying about the race that is coming up. And the next few weeks is a big unknown. I have to accept that, and there's going to be a lot more of this to unpack in those sports psychology sessions as I progress through this injury. And I'm sure once I've got my feet back on the ground and I'm actually building back up into running again, other emotions are going to come up because I'm not going to be where I was when I was last running, and it's going to take time. But I'm really determined to actually work through all of that and hopefully come out the other side gaining something that I never would have expected. I'm not calling it a silver lining just yet, but come back to me this time next year and we'll see. Until then, or until next time, I'll be on these, talking about my feelings and letting myself cry and not seeing that as a negative thing that must be avoided at all costs. I will also be doing my best to love the grind. Peace.